Hey, everybody, welcome to Let's Chat, the awesome show where we have an opportunity to sit down with broadcasters on our service and learn about their journeys, have conversations with all of you in the audience. And a quick question, where are my dinos at? Do we have dino emotes in chat? I know I see some people at the very start of it posting. I want to see all those dinos, y'all. There we go. That's what I love to see. Welcome into today's show. As always, this is a conversation with broadcasters learning about their journey, some of the things that they have come to grow into the years. And I'm very excited for today's conversation because this is a broadcaster, much like myself, that's been in our space for a very long time. By the way, if you don't know who I am, I'm John Brentz. I am the director of community here at Twitch. I also go by Kawaii Guy. I've been a broadcaster in our space for the past 20 years, which is always wild to think about. And I'm joined by another legend today, the one, the only, SenseiCJ. Sensei, let's get you up here on the show. Yo, dude.
Hey,
So good to see you.
What's going on?
Hey,
It's great to be here.
it's so good. Heck yeah. I'm so glad you could join for today's show. I've always been impressed with everything that you produce on your show, but you know what? We're going to dive into all of those elements as we go through today's conversation. So let's kick off with just a little bit about yourself. Tell the world who you are, when you started. Let's start at the very start of that journey. What got you on Twitch in the beginning?
Man. You're gonna make me feel like an old man here. Well, it started back in 2014.
There we
back
go.
back when things were so much different. And I have so many stories to share about that. But I originally started on wrestling content, WWE, and we kind of branched off into more anime. And fighting games, and we got partnered maybe 8 months after I started, and I just felt like a lot of fun things and funny things happened on the channel, so why not share the experience? Started off on a laptop with like Intel graphics processing, just and yeah, it just kind of grew from there.
I love that. So the journey began obviously with that I'm assuming you had a long-standing love of World Wrestling Entertainment, like probably goes back to probably WWF era and all that. I guess it was that the initial spark that got you into broadcasting, like, you know what, I want to share my love with the world of this property, and then it just expanded to like, oh, I love other things, let me show you those things as well. Was that where it really came from for you?
I wish it did.
You wish?
No, it just started off. Yeah, no. Well, the reason I say that is because I just thought at the time I was playing a lot of NBA 2K, and I thought I was really good at the game, and I just wanted to share me beating my friends at the game. That was it. It was that simple. Like, it wasn't anything elaborate or special. I think it eventually grew into that, of course, but no, it was just me bragging. Hey, I'm beating my friends at this game. I want you to see. That's it.
Nice. And I'm assuming you can still hold your own if a person were to challenge you in the chat and be like, you know what, I want to challenge you to a match. Oh, okay. All right.
Not in 2024. There's a lot of new strategies now. Not anymore.
But obviously you're going through the eras, like you're hopping into this, you wanted to, play those titles, dive into that on that front. I guess, like, as it came to like crafting your voice at the very start of that era, like, what were some of the things that you came up against as a broadcaster that you were like, you know what, I want to give this a try, or I want to try this now? Like, how do you make those decisions when you're going through those transformations or even choosing a title to dive at?
Yeah, so one of my main things is I really pay attention to what everybody else is doing. Even if right now, if someone casual asks you, hey, I hear you stream. What games do you stream? Do you play any Call of Duty? Do you play any Apex? Do you play? And those games are cool, right? But for me, I'm like, okay, I always hear these games. I always see people doing and playing the same things. I want to do something different. I want, when people stop by into SenseiCJ's dojo, we're going to get a different experience. I kind of view Twitch and even the word channels kind of like if you're holding a remote and you're going through and you're pressing buttons and you're going through Cartoon Network and Nickelodeon and all these different services. That's kind of how I view our channels, right? So, what can you get at my channel? And that's kind of how I approached it when I started with the wrestling content. I saw nobody was doing it at all. And I just felt like it gave me a chance for me to have my own identity. So that was the plan.
Nice, nice. So as you constructed the dojo, as you're building out this front, I do comparisons when I'm talking with broadcasters, kind of like when you're walking through a mall and you see the different storefronts and how you present yourself about what you're going to receive. Like, what are some of the elements? Like, if I'm a viewer and I'm walking through the mall that is Twitch, what am I going
Yeah.
to find on your broadcast? Like, what is that vibe, and what do you present and say? You know, every time you're here, you're going to receive this. Like, what are some of those elements that you provide?
Yeah. So whenever people stop like on my channel, especially if you're a regular, my goal is to kind of make you feel like you're literally like a warrior in like a dojo, right? Like,
Mm.
because I feel like there's certain aspects of confidence that you can take that into your real lives and approach life like that, right? So I just want you to feel like an individual, like every person matters, even if you look at it in the grand scape of like, let's say a Marvel universe or an anime. You know, I want every character to feel important. I want everybody to have their own just element, right?
Mm.
Whatever you are, if even if it creates a new persona for you, whatever it is that you want, I want you to express yourself and just feel like a unique individual.
I like that you were saying the concept of personas, because we take on different elements of performance. I was saying right before we hopped live here, like even my own branding has changed over the years. When I was doing comedy on YouTube at the very start of my journey, I was a cast member at SMBC. It was crass. It was weird. We did different types of sketches, right? And then over the
Yeah.
years, my brand evolved into Kawaii Guy. Do you feel like your brand has evolved over time with either personal discoveries or things that you have found work for your channel, and also for identifying your audience, as you're saying, coming in with their own warrior arcs?
Yes. So what I had to learn was sometimes it's not always best to just play one game because
Mm.
when you start to play something else, you start looking around like, where is everybody? Where'd he go? You were just rocking with me, right? So, and my first example of that was I remember, and this was when the OG Elgatos came out, where you can stream retro games that had like composite and component cables and all of that. So I remember I got an N64, I got my Paper Mario, I loaded the cartridge up. I was so excited, and I'm like, oh, they're gonna love this. Oh my gosh, I'm playing authentic Paper Mario. And I started the stream up, crickets. And I'm like, they just loved
Ah.
me 2 seconds ago, right? So, I kind of had to learn in order for me to, I guess, grow the way I want, I need to really start diversifying my content and really get into variety. And that's the direction I wanted to
Mm.
go. Yeah.
Mm.
So I
Because
had to learn that the hard way.
you do learn it the hard way. I think every broadcaster learns the hard way. I always, when I'm talking with broadcasters or I'm coaching people upwards, I always talk about there's three pathways you can kind of choose in the arc of your broadcast journey. You can either, center yourself, you do one type of content, like one category. Let's say you're a hardcore Fortnite streamer or a hardcore Street Fighter player, right? You go down that path. But let's say you evolve. You have interest in, like, if you're Street Fighter, you have an, interest in Mortal Kombat or Tekken. Obviously, Tekken's hitting right
Mm-hmm.
now. And so that can be, the opportunity for you to go to the second pathway, which is genre specific. So if you have a
Ah,
love of
yes.
fighting games, now you can expand. Or for like
So
myself,
all
it's
the
love of
different fighting games.
JRPGs, and I know we share that. We share a love of JRPGs. Okay, well,
Mm-hmm.
fans of JRPGs can find a home with us. When you go pure variety, I always say it's the slowest pathway, but it's the longest pathway that you can build for yourself over time, because then people become interested in who you are and what you stand for, and they align with that, and then that carries the long tail. But I guess when you're choosing like a title like a Paper Mario, do you find that like some people are just like, wait a second, I was expecting WWE or like more competitive games or fighting games, this isn't my vibe? Or like, how do you separate the decisions you make from like the potential audience that's going to come in? Like, how do you choose between those?
I'm gonna be honest, man. I stopped caring. Like honestly, it's
That's great.
I'm gonna tell you. I'm gonna tell you because like I need to make sure I'm having fun first and foremost. Like I can't
That's
be
right.
on stream for hours and hours playing a game I don't want to play because that's what people want to see of me, right? Like I always tell them, I'm like, listen, there are some other people playing this game. If you want to see the game, I mean, you're more than welcome to go check them out, right? But I need to make sure that I'm having fun, because when you have fun, the community feels that. It's a one-to-one, like it's a collaborative effort. I always say that, like this is something that we feed off each other's energy. So when one side, if the community's energy isn't right, that's going to reflect on the streamer. The streamer always knows. They always know when something is like, this feels a little off today. What's happening? So, and vice versa. So
okay.
Caring,
so it's good. It's good that you've reached that point, because I know some people can get really absorbed in the numbers game, where it's like, I have to keep doing this thing. I hate playing this game, but I know it gets me numbers. And that's where you begin to separate away from playing the chase, like chasing the algorithm or chasing the number, and more of just like, how am I actually developing myself professionally, based on interests or who I'm trying to attract. And it's a tough separation for many people to do. So like, do you remember the point at which you stopped caring? Do you remember when that shift was for you? Was it pretty early in the career? Was it like later into the career? Like, what point was it where you're just like, you know what? Let's go on this path.
It just sounds so bad, but I stopped caring around probably like a year in after, as you say, chasing the numbers. I knew that the wrestling content and at that time, got me the viewership I seeked. And, in those days, it was way harder to become Twitch partner numerically. So, I was like, I gotta continue doing this. So, there were times where it's just like, I do not feel like playing this today, but you know what? Gotta get on that chase, right? So, there are times of that, but maybe about like a year after, I was just like, you know what? I rather people come by for me and my content and just to hang with the community than just the game. I feel like I'm more than a game. I'm a presence in my own, right? So, and I feel like everybody should feel like that. Like you matter. Like it's not just the game, right? Your commentary on the gameplay and other things that you bring to your channel, it all matters, right? So we should all feel like individuals.
I love that. And just so everybody knows, we have the chat open on our side. As if any of the things we're saying ring true to you, expand on it in the chat, share those thoughts with us in the chat. We got them up on our side. Want to shout some of y'all out as we're having these combos today. Talking about like when the flow of games like Paper Mario, or heck, I'd say most JRPGs, or I think of like games like Baldur's Gate, which is obviously trending and stuff like that. Those can be slower progression. So like when people are coming in to get to know you, they may feel like, oh, should I step in if I don't really know where you're at in the story? Or even you as a broadcaster may feel like, oh, this is text heavy. This is starting to slow me down. How do you as a broadcaster decide at what point, this game might be good for me to play offline? This might be good for me to explore, maybe cut that down for VOD or put it up on YouTube or do shorts or something with it. How do you kind of balance the energy when it comes to selecting some of those titles?
Well, I try my best to do recaps. If people are confused, I try my best to do recaps, because there are games, like you said, that are dialogue heavy. You have your Personas of the world. Like Persona is just so much dialogue, and just JRPGs in general.
So good.
But it's good. Like that's the thing.
But it's a 200-hour game. So like as a broadcaster, if you're like, hey, I'm going to go into Persona 5, be ready to do 200 hours on broadcast of that game if you want to see it through.
So I really try my best to kind of do recaps for people, but I mean, like you have to feel your community out, honestly. Like, do they seem to be engaged with what's happening, right? And even if somebody does come in the middle of it, try to recap it for them. Sometimes people know what's happening also. So it just all depends, man. There's no, I don't think there's like one just simple answer for this. I just feel like you just kind of have to feel it out and kind of decide, hey, maybe this is a little too slow paced. Even when I think of like a classic game like Shenmue, right? Shenmue is like, that's another game. It's so like, I think it's good. Like, I think it's good, but it's just so slow paced, and it's just like, I don't think that the community will enjoy this very much. So But it is a
Yeah,
good time to converse with the community too with slow games. So you got to see
yeah.
what you think.
Well, you got a double tap on this thought from Rosie the Mouse in chat, who was actually saying, yeah, they can feel the energy of a streamer. Like when you come in, if they're feeling a title, they're enjoying that title, you can tell as a viewer that they are.
Yeah.
And it's knowing that kind of shared conversation between your audience. I talked about previously in one of the speeches I'd given, I think it was at TwitchCon, about my experience with Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep, and it was not a good show. It was slow. I was not feeling it, and I had to have that moment where I'm like, guys, love y'all. Know you love Kingdom Hearts. I do not love this particular Kingdom Hearts, so we're gonna stop, and I'm gonna pivot. And sometimes you reach those points where you have to do that. So having that two-way dialogue with your community, absolutely key. Let's expand on the concept of community real quick. Like when you think of a community member coming in, I love how you're saying how they are, basically on their own warrior arc when they come in, and you're helping build, and you've even built like extensions, like plugins for the chat to help them with their growth journey and all this.
Mhm.
I guess, what are some of the points that you hit on with them when they walk in to either welcome the community or even engage with them after to make sure that they're continuing on their journey?
Yeah, so I'm all about like building up your legacy, right? I want people to really feel like you're starting a new game, right? And you get to choose, you make the choices for your story, right? So like we literally call things like story mode in my channel. And you could view it like a Telltale game, right? You make choices and it all a part of your story. And sometimes other warriors, oh, I remember you did that. Okay, I remember that, and it all just coincides with each other. Yeah, again, it's just again all about making people feel like individuals, and you matter, like you matter as an individual. And one of the coolest things also that I think about for a community, and when we speak on community also, is like the quality of viewer, right? So when, let's say if I get up and go to the bathroom or something, if the chat is still moving, people are still talking to each other, like that's a community to me. Like it's not all about me. It's like you guys are catching up with each other. Hey, what's up, man? How was your day? What's going on? What'd you do today? And then people remember different conversations you had with each other. That is a community. That's like quality to me, So that's what matters to me.
Do you feel obligation as a creator? Because I always hear folks say, oh, I gotta always be on, or I always gotta be doing this, or got to have the Discord up and going. I got to be involved in there. I got to be playing offline with my community. Do you feel like you've reached a point where those community conversations, them chatting with each other, now has a life of its own? Or do you feel as a broadcaster that you still have to be on top of it all the time? Like, have you been able to reach a point of not caring in that element, I guess, like where you can say, you know what? They got each other now too to push forward.
Well, I won't lie to you. It's a very off and on thing. It fluctuates. Some days, chat is, on fire. Everyone's on fire. Everyone, Discord. Everyone is communicating. Everyone's doing their thing, right? And there are some days, and it's like, do you guys still care? Are we still good? Like, what's happening? I just think that community members kind of underestimate their power. Communities are built on the backbone of the people, like the viewers. You guys are the backbone of a channel, and you guys dictate the success that someone has. If they don't have success, they dictate everything, and the power of the community is just so essential to me. I definitely still face those struggles.
And if anything, like those moments in lull can make us feel like, oh, I'm doing something wrong. Like then the imposter syndrome and all that stuff kind of time to start to set in of like, am I doing enough? Do actually, I think it was Dublas, apologies because usernames are hard for me, but I want to shout you out because what you said in chat, where there's can sometimes feel like there isn't an actual community occurring with some broadcasts. You'll come into it, maybe they're just in tune with the broadcaster, but there's really not that mutual conversation happening. Whereas when you go to a smaller community existing on Twitch, you can feel the connection's a little bit stronger. Maybe the broadcasters addressing them more. Maybe the community members are just like, they're actually forming stronger relationships with one another. I know, for example, like people have met in my community. Some of those people are now married. Some people are dating. Some people are best friends and traveled the world together now. And so those relationships happen definitely in these smaller cohorts. I guess, how do you think about addressing as community sizes get larger? As you have a larger broadcast, how do you encourage either moderators or community members to maintain that same feel as it scales? Because like right now, we have almost 10,000 people watching us, but to me, as a performer, as a broadcaster, I feel the same as I do when I have 10, 20, 30. And I try to make sure
Yeah.
everybody feels a part of the conversation. I guess, how do you navigate that?
So what I'm about to say might be a little weird. Sometimes I kind of fear growth to a certain extent because I do not want to chat where like it's just going just 1,000 miles an hour, because then it's like I can't talk to anybody. Like I want to talk to people. That's why I'm here. We're together because we have similar interests, whether it's a game, culture, whatever, right? And if I can't connect with you and we can't talk, and I'm not able to say your name or any of that, like, it's just like, what I don't know. It's just, for me, it's like, what am I here for, right? Like that's important to me.
Yeah.
It's not all just about like numbers. Like, again, like the quality. I want to develop these connections with people, right? So, yeah, that's probably a weird answer in terms of like, hey, I don't want to grow that much.
It's good that you said that. I like what Lord Blaze also shouts out. It's like remembering your people and where you came from, because as we go through this journey of content creation, if that's something that you're pursuing, any of the viewers who are watching right now, if you're pursuing that career, it's ensuring you don't lose sight the people who helped either send the elevator back down to lift you up, or even the people that were there through all the thick and thin, the rough broadcasts, through the times where you're like, maybe I should quit or maybe I should do something else, but they stuck through because they believed in you. It's always remembering those folks. And I say it to a lot of broadcasters too, it's reminding yourself, like, as I look at, like, I even see some of my regulars here who dedicate so much time, like Melisors and Flitty Cat, who dedicate so much time to my own community. It's remembering that number, if I'm looking at right now, close to 10,000 watching, those are all people with their own choices to watch, to engage, to be a part of it. And although that interpersonal connection can't happen like when it scales, we can't shout out every single person in chat, ensuring they know that they're there and that they're a person and they matter, I think is something that has to be maintained. And some people forget that as they go.
Yeah, that's something I do in my community all the time, man. Like when if I feel like I've missed somebody that's talking, I always say, "At me if I missed you." So it just pops up red. Hey, what's up? Like, I just make sure you know and that, like, you are acknowledged. Right? I see you. What's up?
So we got some good questions. I want to pull some of these out from the chat. So Turtle says, "Is your stream life your real life, or do you keep that separate?" I talked a little bit about this previously myself, but I'm curious where you draw the lines there, Sensei, because like obviously being not necessarily entirely unfiltered, but showcasing yourself and your truest self to how you want to perform that in your broadcast is very important. But I guess, where do you draw the lines personally when it comes to that balance between personal life and what you present?
Yeah, usually obviously there are elements of your real life that go into stream life, but no, there's definitely elements of my life that I definitely keep for myself privately. I feel like we as creators, streamers, we share so much of our life is public, right? Like I still value having things private for yourself and just for you. Like, nobody needs to know, like, this is just for you and whoever, your family, whatever the case is. Like, I just feel like everything doesn't have to be on the internet. Once something hits the internet, it's on there forever. And like, that's it, it's over. Right. So, yeah, I still believe in keeping those things separate for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And there was a question. Let me actually shout out the individual who actually highlighted this. Kenny, what is like the line between that and a parasocial relationship? Because obviously, when we think of the relationships that can form between us and our audiences, we want to have the meaningful connections. We want them to feel a part of the community. We want them to know that, you're here for this part of the journey or for this amount of time that we have together. Let's celebrate and enjoy it together. But it can transition into uncomfortable conversations. It can transition into, hey, can I show up? The rule of thumb, I think, number one is never show up to anybody's houses unannounced. That should just be a given. Don't do that.
Yeah.
But I guess, have you ever had to balance that? The difference between like having like solid community communication and the dangers of potentially a parasocial relationship.
Yeah. One of the major things I do, I make sure to set that boundary like real fast, right? I'm from New York. A lot of us are outspoken. We're gonna tell you how we feel, right? So I'll let you know. And what happens a lot is sometimes different communities allow certain words to be used or certain language, or they might be more strict or more lax or whatever the case is. If you bring that to my community, I'll tell you off rip. Listen, this is what it is. Like I'm not with that. Like I'm gonna let you know from right now, right? So I set that boundary pretty fast. Like I don't really have to deal with that. And and if there's any problems past that, just get banned, man. Like just get banned. like I don't care.
And I think it's for broadcasters to be comfortable with, if a person doesn't fit the vibe of the channel, the content you're making, it's okay to ban or remove them if they're not being an active part of the conversation. That is okay. It's totally capable for you to do that and make that choice on your side. I was getting a kick out of somebody shouted out my resemblance to John Oliver. Now I can't unsee it because I'm seeing some of that stuff too. But I appreciate you shouting that out. This is a good question from Sickonomics. Curious, how do you go about having a community grow closer together, keep it alive in Discord, in social? How do you further encourage that community growth? Do you have any mechanics? I know we were talking about you have a chat-based prompt, so like people can level up mons in your chat, for example. Can you talk a little bit about some of those mechanisms that you use?
Yeah, it's really about that interaction and integration, right? You have to again continue to make people feel like they are part of. At least that's what works for me anyway. I don't want to make this seem like this is the one way, but for me, what works for me is making people feel a part of the show, right? Their decisions, what they do, it's a big deal to me. It's a part of showing that appreciation because I've been on the platform for a long time, and I still appreciate just like people saying what's up. Like you have to appreciate the foundation, right? Like people still saying hello still means something to me, and you have to give back to that. I feel like, and if anything, speaking about imposter syndrome, that's probably like one of the biggest challenges for me is, am I doing enough that makes people feel like they should continue to return? Right. And it's kind of that eternal struggle of viewer retention, especially new viewer retention. But yeah, just make people feel more involved. Discord is huge because offline, it's an offline aspect, and you just have more time to speak to people and the community come together and just make people feel more involved in decisions you make. If you say, hey, what game are we playing? You give options. The community votes for that option. Play that game. They decided for it. Just make their decision. It's as simple as that. Any decision you make sure that they are involved in it.
Yeah, and I think as part of that, and this was actually a good flag raised by Play by Society, and this is something that I think we just all have to acknowledge as a collective community. Some streamers are doing it all on their own, and some have a whole team of people behind them. And that's an acknowledgement which I think we all should, think about and process when it comes to the amount of time we can give to what we're working on. Because there are people out there that start on, like, if we think of like life is a staircase, right? There's some people who are already starting at the top of the staircase because they have the funds, they have the team. There's all those variables in life where some people are already starting at a higher stage, and some of us have to work really hard to get ourselves to go up that staircase. Like for myself, I'm somewhere like in the lower middle right now when I think of that staircase. But I'm grateful for like people like I shouted out Mel and Flitty and like people who keep my show going beyond me just being live, because they started as community members and they became more active contributors. So like over time you begin to build your teams of folks that can be your support structure. I don't think it's something worth expending like any anger towards, like if a person had more opportunities at the start because they got that given to them or they were born into it or whatever. But it's acknowledging that that is a part of the ecosystem that you just have to navigate. But what gives me hope is that great performers and great broadcasters and great talent will shine above people that have just the teams and the money and the marketing, because you can't deny great talent if somebody's coming to a stage. Like if you're going to a Street Fighter tournament, somebody's great at Street Fighter, it doesn't matter where they came from, it matters they're just really great at it. I guess have you ever felt that challenge of like, you say you're watching, you're seeing what's happening in a space. Do you ever feel that sort of competition or comparison start to come into your flow on your side, Sensei?
I think when I first started, there was that feeling, and it wasn't a feeling of jealousy, but it was kind of that feeling of just feeling like you're left out of opportunities. You're looking at friends, you're saying, dang, well, they hit this sub goal, or dang, they Twitch invited them to do this, or, things like that. And, you really start kind of doubting yourself, like, maybe I'm not as good as I thought I was. Then, for me, like I've done a lot on the platform. At this point, I'm really just in competition with myself. I want to make sure whatever goals I set for myself that I accomplish those things. And that's really my biggest concern. A lot of other stuff can get really distracting. You mentioned earlier you despise calling it X now, Twitter. But
yeah.
I don't really spend a lot of time on Twitter. I'm just hyper focused on accomplishing the goals that I want. When you talk about being born into something, I've literally come from a basement when I first started. I was in a little room in the basement, then moved into a tiny apartment in the Bronx, right? And just had to really work my way out to just trying to create content that was unique. Actually trying that's another thing that can get lost in the sauce, because a lot of people will say, hey, we're trying, or I've tried everything. Have you? Did you really can you really honestly say you put 100% into this? So that's another kind of thing. And I was being honest with myself. I'm like, nah, I don't think I'm putting 100% into this. So if I fail, it's okay, because at least I know I put 100% into this,
There's a comment that came in, and I see it a lot, especially on the Twitch broadcast and a lot of conversations. People talk about discoverability, especially for smaller broadcasters, smaller streamers. One, I hate using when I hear people say, "Oh, I'm a small streamer." I hate that concept. We need to get rid of those words, because you're an actor, you're a performer, you're a host, you're a great Street Fighter player, whatever it is, that's what you are.
Mindset.
I think it's the mindset. But when it comes to discoverability, there's a few things. Obviously, on the service side, there's sections, there's the category, there's the means to potentially be discovered. But when I think of, okay, if we have all of these venues, let's say in the Just Chatting section, which is what we're in right now, there's a lot of different channels you can watch. So I guess the question that I would like to pose to you, Sensei, is just like, who keeps your attention? Like, are there qualities or factors or things you're looking for? And this is, I think, advice for all broadcasters on the service when it comes to making themselves, their full 100%. When you are discovered, I always think about, what are you performing? Because if you get put on a stage and you're not your full self and you're not performing, you're not going to win that audience over. So are there any factors you think of, or like you need to think about doing this for yourself?
Well, it's a layered question. For a layered response, I think that number one, the most important is number one, being yourself. And I don't think people understand how difficult that is for some people, especially newer broadcasters, because a lot of times they watch big YouTubers, big streamers with high numbers, and they kind of just take on their personality and take on their essence, and they would just become a mini them, right? And people would see you and they're like, oh, you're just this person. Why would I watch you when I could just watch that person? Right? So that's number one. Conversation is a big thing for me. Interaction, talking to the chat. There's a lot of times I've been to channels, people are just staring at the screen, never acknowledging the chat. And when they do respond, it's just kind of lackluster. It just feels like, what is, like, are you excited to be here? Right. So yeah. And I also want people to understand, you do not have to be like this big over the top, like, personality. You don't have to jump around and do backflips, and you don't have to do that. If that's not you, like, you don't have to do that. Right. If you're monotone, get into that. I mean, like, maybe you might want to do some ASMR. I don't know. Like, there's different, like, little bags you can get into. Like, just be you though. Whatever you is, do that and master that.
That's very good. And there's exercises people can do when it comes to identifying, how you structure your show, how you can get closer to that. I usually say it's your foundation, your additives, your distractions. The foundation is you and your core and what you want to showcase. Your additives are what make your show better. That's the game you're playing. That's the music you're performing. So think about, like, what those two key elements are for you, and make sure that's visible at all times on your broadcast as you're pushing through. And honestly, I identify very well with, like, what Jeremy Blake wrote here in chat. They wrote, I don't know, man. I'm 8K followers, averaging 6 to 10 viewers as of late. It's very annoying. And this roller coaster of viewership will occur through the entirety of career. No one is always at the top of viewership. There will be the peaks and valleys all throughout a career. On my previous YouTube channels, I have millions of subscribers, right? Those were earned over 5 years of time. It was not an easy grind. But now when my average viewership, like on my own channel, is about 20 to 30 people that show up. But I think the way that you visualize those people choosing to spend time with you, you really have to remember, these are people willing to spend their time with me. Give them a great show. Not every show sells out all the time. So don't get too down on yourself when it comes to the peaks and valleys that will naturally occur, because you have no control over who's going to come to your show. All you can do is say, I'm going to do a great show at this time, mark it, tell people where it's going to be and what you're going to be doing. And really, it's kind of from there, the audience's decision to choose to spend time. It's tough.
Yeah.
But I see here, Jeremy streams 10 to 15 hours a day. So this is another thing I want to bring up. What's the best way of saying it? The point of diminishing returns when it comes to spending time on something. And so I typically advise people to do like 1 to 2 hour shows. And then what else can you do elsewhere to bring people to your next performance? I guess that kind of ties to like social strategy, or like how you promote externally. I'm curious, CJ, do you have any thoughts on, how you spend your time in your day versus just, hey, I'm just going to do it for 10 to 15 hours?
Yeah, you've touched up on a lot of good points there, and especially like understanding that this is a roller coaster ride, right? There's as you say, peaks and valleys. No, it's a marathon. This is not going to be a sprint. Even when it feels like a sprint, you're gonna get tired at some point, and you're gonna start feeling it. But yeah, first of all, streaming 10 to 15 hours, I would 100% not recommend. It's first of all, I feel like you're risking oversaturation of yourself. I'm a firm believer of like, make people miss you a little bit, right? Like, people you don't always have to be the main character. People don't always have to see you 24/7 in order to, feel important. It kind of goes with that quality over quantity discussion. But yeah, I would diversify on other platforms also, like, and bring them in to your channel, right? So those 10, 15 hours, maybe you could cut that to 3 to 4 while you're streaming. And then now we start looking at YouTube or TikTok, right? There's so many video editor integrations that Twitch has made now that I've myself have been using, right? So they let you edit your videos into vertical format. You can upload that straight to YouTube Shorts, which is, they just released it today. YouTube Shorts are huge. They're huge. Like, they are not stopping. Like, they are probably the highest growing thing on YouTube right now, YouTube Shorts, and uploading to TikTok. These are all different audiences you get to tap into, right? That you may not have met on Twitch. Twitch discoverability, it's a whole different challenge, because you have people on channels who are accustomed to being in these channels. They're not really going to be around, like, actively looking, right? Like, well, what are we talking? Maybe like, I mean, even if you look at yourself, right? Think about, hey, do I look for channels that often, right? Like I would, like, on YouTube, or am I really in the same places pretty much, right? So you gotta spread that across the board. The people that you meet new, they're probably in that process of looking for their home, right? That channel or a couple channels that's like makes them feel at home. The best way right now that I think on Twitch probably is word of mouth and collaboration, just because it's coming from a trusted source, right? So if you hear, like, you know, if John says, hey, you should check this person out, I would be more willing to check that person out because you recommended it than me finding it on my own and just, like, I guess, guessing if their content is for me or not.
That's right. That's right. It's very similar to, like, you recommend a cafe to a friend, or a restaurant to a friend, or a bar, and that becomes your space. You know, for those of us getting older like myself, it's like, you know, the show Cheers was on for a while. It's like people's got their Cheers, right? And once you find that home, then you stay there, or you try to stay there as long as you can until life comes into play, and that will inevitably happen. Usually, you will see audiences transition every 4 years or so that you're content creating. So, like, my early career, those viewers now have families, or they graduated university, or they graduated high school. Like, every 4 years, life kind of shifts for people, and you expect your audience is going to transition out, usually in that time frame. So you have to think for yourself, you know, how do I welcome in those people? Like, when the first person says hi in a chat room, they're looking for a home to be in. As you said, they're looking to connect with somebody or feel out the vibe of the space, and is it a space for them? So being able to communicate that visually with the way you perform, the way you talk, the way, you know, your moderators talk in your chat, very important as they're going through.
Even your appearance, everything.
Yeah. Oh, your appearance, 100%. If you, I talked about this with Ratters on our last show. If I'm just sitting back here, just kind of lounged off cam, is that the best show I can perform? Heck no. You want to dress the part. There's a reason why David Bowie, Prince, all of them commanded stages, is how they presented themselves. And you got to think about that in association with brand. There was another great thing that actually Jaded Streams brought this up. So they have about 750 followers, averaging pretty well on viewership, but they needed a mental health break. And now that they're back for a while, their traffic really hasn't fully come back, no matter what they try to do to grow further. And they're curious if we have any advice about what they should do. Well, one, I'm glad you took a mental health break. When you reach those points where you're like, I need to separate, take a breather, totally. You need to do that for yourself. So I highly recommend that if anybody ever reaches that point, or they're going too long, or 10 to 15 hours is like, oh man, they even said their carpal tunnels settle in. Take that break for yourself, because you are the important factor for your show, first and foremost. The immediate advice I give, and I'm curious what you think, CJ, is I think if you were communicating with your audience before that break about, like, hey, this is what I'm doing, I'll be back though, anticipate that they're going to eventually start to flow back in and they're going to come back to you. But maybe after the mental health break, you discovered something of like, you know what, I no longer want to play that game that I was doing, and now it's another part of the growth journey. So I guess, like, have you navigated those breaks in the past, CJ, or like, do you have any advice when it comes to like reinvigorating after a moment away?
it's an eternal struggle we have to deal with, and that is, when do we take a break? How do we do it? Are they going to forget about me? It's a real struggle. It's kind of, I mean, you pretty much said what I was going to say, is you just kind of have to have the faith that, you know, they will return. But you know, you can't, I'm very big on natural energy. You can't make anybody come back if they don't want to, right? Like, you know, you can't send a bunch of DMs around, hey, where you at? Come on, I'm live, right? So it's an eternal struggle that we face when it comes to live streaming. You know, is number one, you know, we don't earn it really any revenue if we're not live. So, which is why people feel pressured to doing the long streams, the subathons, the tipathons, all of that, is because we don't make anything if we aren't live, which is why I continue to recommend maybe start looking into different platforms to diversify your content. And then you could start bringing more people in, right? So you can monetize those other platforms and, you know, meet new people. Right. So it's an eternal struggle. There's really no answer for that per se. Like, it's just try to have good faith that they'll return, but definitely prioritize yourself, and you did the right thing.
Yeah. And prioritizing time, because I saw a few comments regarding, like, those of us who work full-time jobs on top of broadcasting. It is not an easy balance. And then if you got a family, you got kids, it keeps adding on, right? For all the challenges that you're going to be up against in terms of segmenting time. But I think that's what you're hitting on here, is prioritizing time to give a great show and then work on these other elements that will bring people to that great show. And so if I have, at the end of my day, let's say the kids are asleep, I got this going. Thankfully, I don't have kids, but I have cats that keep me up all night long. But like, prioritizing time so that it works best for you, while not burning yourself out on the, I have to just keep broadcasting, and why isn't the broadcast working? It's segmenting the time out so that way you can potentially bring in people that would be interested in that main show. But it is a challenge. It's the hands down challenge. I know there's some days, you know, I finish after shows like this and I'm all my stuff that I'm doing on the Twitch front. Maybe I don't want to go live because I don't have the energy for that. And so I've structured my personal schedule to give myself 2 days off of just the stream for my audience, and I'm focused on other elements during those days. I'm producing YouTube content during those off days, or I'm producing shorts, which, great shout to shorts. It works. I hate vertical format. I'm personally against it, but you know what? It works. And so I spend those days doing those things. And then I tell my audience, these are the days that I can guarantee a show to you. And making sure that you have that balance and understanding with your audience is going to be the means to success. But yeah, definitely pay attention to those who do show up. Versus, I like what Lookology said, stop concentrating on who's not there and pay attention to who is there and giving you that time and energy. That's very important. That's very important. I want to talk about, because like we were talking a little bit about things that like are challenging with Twitch. And I think one of the things is when you're not live, obviously the channel, the doors are closed on the storefront. How do you think about that? Or like, what are things that like Twitch could even potentially do in the future in your mind that would, you know, keep that storefront open and let people in and hang out and all that jazz?
So I understand that streaming and Twitch is a live streaming platform, and I understand that that's the focus, that's the bread and butter, and I feel like everybody understands that. I just feel like there needs to be more things to do while we're not on. And I think things like stories definitely helps with that, especially for the people that can't catch the live stream. There was a feature that was on Twitch, I think it was like 2017 or something like that, where it was like a live social feed. And I think things like that are, maybe we could revisit that now. Like, I feel like it'll be cool to kind of be able to interact with your community in that way, right? You could have sub-only posts or however way you want to do that. I feel like now may be the time to revisit that. There needs to be things to do while we are offline on the page, right? there just needs to be some more things that we can
Yeah.
that viewer can interact with, right? Because this is supposed to be their home, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, it's like, what can you give to them while they might be browsing or might just be discovering you for the first time, but you're not live right now? So, like, what can
mhm.
I do to provide to them? The shout out to the feed feature, I think, is a wonderful one. I think of like some of the stuff that you've experimented with your chat when it comes to the leveling of the mons and stuff that you have built.
Yeah, yeah,
Keeps them engaged while you're not there physically. And I think that's something
yeah,
to really think about as a broadcaster as you're planning out, let's say, your next week. If you're planning out your next week of content, okay, I will be live for sure. Let's say, like tonight, I'm going live. Great. Tomorrow, what am I going to be doing that can encourage people or build a system so that way, if I'm not live, they have something else they can consume or keep them in my world. And that's where like a lot of the distribution to outside services comes into play. But yeah,
mhm.
thinking through like what are those different elements to keep them there, it's a tough one. It's a tough one, but I think it's something that we should all collectively think about.
Yeah. So for me, every month because I call it chapters. So every month it'll be a new chapter, and then every stream I call it a page. So it's like every day it's like a new opportunity to write your story. That's basically like kind of the concept and theme. And every chapter I create new game modes, new things for us to do. So we always have fresh content to continue to do, whether I'm online, offline. Fresh new commands, new game modes. A lot of times we try to visit different like universes, right? So like one time we'll visit like a Dragon Ball Z universe, and with that, they'll have maybe they can have a rescue Krillin game mode, and maybe you'll fight Frieza or stuff like that. Really start thinking outside the box and really thinking like how can I create content that even when I'm not live, like my community can interact with, because now that you're not in the picture or you're not live, now they can start interacting with each other and communicating with each other, and it just strengthens that community bond.
I dig that. I think that's a really good shout. Is just, I think if anything, this would be my advice immediately to everybody in chat. It's just like, I think even like Smirky shouted it in the chat there, was just like, take some time for yourself, like a half hour before your next show, or maybe even 15 minutes before your next show, and just think about, okay, what is the mission I'm going to accomplish with my show, and how can I distribute that elsewhere as well to find in people who didn't show up for the live broadcast they might be interested in. Let's say if it is a boss fight tonight, if I'm going through a gym fight in Pokemon, because I'm going to play classic Pokemon tonight. Okay, well, let me then take the clip of that gym fight, and that's what I can redistribute elsewhere, because somebody might be looking for, okay, how did that person take on, and what Pokemon did they use, and did they fail? And then people can fight about me making the wrong choices.
That's
But
a
I
great
feel
point.
like, there's ways that you can structure your show to then distribute elsewhere, and have that in mind as you're going through.
Yep.
So something I want to talk about too is just like, where do you see like the future going? Because like obviously there's tons of creators out there, there's lots of content being produced, lots of people are live all across the space. Are there any hopes for where the space goes next in your eye, or like where you'd want it to go when it comes to like the Twitch experience or broadcasting experience?
Um, it's always going to vary in terms of the broadcaster experience, depending on who it is. I think people's personalities play a part. Like, for example, like for me, I'm more of like a loner. I'm kind of like a small circle guy. Like, you'll pretty much see me in my own space, just kind of, hanging with my friends. And that's about it in terms of offline. Right. But I think I feel like we've touched on it earlier, like just expanding to other streaming platforms and bringing them in,
Yeah.
I think it was great that Twitch allowed like multi-streaming now people kind of have the option of watching you how they prefer to, like with live streaming. I still think it's a very unique market. I think it's more difficult than people think it is. I think we need to be more honest with ourselves also. Feel free to watch your own VODs, put yourself in a viewer sense of would I watch this? Does this seem like, even though it's yourself, but like, does this seem cool?
Yeah.
Right? See things you can improve on, things you can, maybe we should have done this better. All right, now I know. Next time I'm gonna do it like this, right? And just start like just being honest with yourself.
Yeah, that's a really good shout. I always tell people, like, would you watch yourself? And like I sit them down in front of their VOD and they're like, oh, this is slow moving now. And I'm like, well, then that's something to start to work on. How do you punch that up? I like the shout too when you're thinking about streaming like on outside services, which, if that's something that somebody's interested in, experiment with it, see what works for you. You may even find that, like, for example, your audience and community that you've built here on Twitch is focused on, they love seeing you do fighting games, or they love seeing you do RPGs, since we were talking about that earlier. And then perhaps another venue performing in could be the experimental venue. It's like a concert performer. If you're going to a concert with a famous musician, you're hoping that it's going to be high quality, produced in a manner that it just like feels like the album that you listen to. Now, if you go to like a smaller, like a black box theater or like a tiny cafe space, and they're doing acoustic set, it may not be the vibe that everybody wanted, but that artist can express themselves in a different way in a different venue. So this might be an opportunity for you to try different things on different venues to see what works best for building up your overall brand. So there's different ways you can experiment. I know you were saying you had tried with a YouTube broadcast recently, but you were doing, which game was it? You felt it was a little slow progression on the text and stuff like that. Was it a JRPG you were doing?
Yakuza.
Yeah. Okay. So you were doing, so you're doing Yakuza. Yeah. There's so much dialogue. There's so much going on there, and it's a turn-based. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so that might work in a different venue than, let's say, a higher energy broadcast that your audience is expecting on a Twitch broadcast. So it's a balance that you can think of for yourself when you're experimenting. Playing the same concert in multiple venues has never worked for me. So like doing the multi-stream option where it's just like I'm ingesting the same show in all these different places, never personally worked for me. It's just too many things to balance on the broadcaster front. But try what works for you when it comes to those elements. We're rapidly approaching time, but I want to ask one more question. For your journey, what do you think is your next evolution, or what next stage of evolution are you hoping to achieve? And you can attribute this to success, like you hope to reach this next stage. Like, what is the next thing that you hope to accomplish?
See, for me, okay, so I'll tell you, one was one of the big goals that I had that I was able to accomplish. And that was reaching 10,000 subs on Twitch. That was something that I really, really wanted to accomplish. And after we accomplished that, it was for a little while like, okay, what's next? I don't know what else, right? I was like, I don't know what else to do now. And for me at the time, it was kind of a testament to, you don't need to have 1 million people watching in the room. Your community is everything. They're everything. So viewership is not just everything ever. Your community support means so much more to me, the quality. That being said, probably my YouTube journey. I've been posting more on YouTube, more on TikTok, SenseiCJ, and just kind of seeing where that goes. Is that something that I'll be able to understand and conquer? I do not understand algorithms at all.
Well, they're always changing, and there was even a meeting I'd watched recently where even like some Google executives were like, I don't even know how it works when it comes to the algorithm nowadays. So you can keep chasing that algorithm, or you can just like build that structure for yourself that works best for you when it's approaching your content. And I think that's really what you're focused on. And you got many congrats in the chat there for reaching that goal and that milestone for yourself, which is really rad to see. I think if anything, you're staying true to yourself, you're expanding, you're continuing to grow. And I think if anything over the past few years has taught us is like, some of us might have had 5-year plans or all those plans ahead. The world can change at any moment. So focusing in on what is in my control right now that is possible, that I can make a small incremental change each day. Something I recommend to a lot of people is like, write one goal for every day when you wake up. And it could be a simple one. It could be put the laundry away. It could be, you know what, I'm going to press go live regardless at 6 p.m. or I'm going to, finish that short that I was working on. And that's the one goal. And if you accomplish that, great. You did your goal for the day. What's my goal then for the next day? And so that way it's all attainable. It's time based. You can make it happen. So, and I love that. Literally, I think a kid in here in the chat, I got to put the laundry away, just was reminded that they have to clean their home. I love that we get to remind the chat too. I guess, where can folks find you? Obviously, like, when can they find you? What are you playing? What's up next? What can we tune into on your front?
Yeah, I'll be live tonight. SenseiCJ is a Twitch channel. I'll be playing Jujutsu Kaisen for the first time. Gonna see what that's about. I'll be live later this week also on Last of Us 2. I want to play some Persona 3 and see how dialogue heavy that is.
It is. Just get ready. It's another one.
So just a variety of content. Just want to dive into a bunch of stuff. And hopefully some of you guys will join me.
Heck yeah. Well, definitely do that, y'all. Make sure you toss SenseiCJ a follow. And I'll be live later today with some Pokemon on /Kawaii Guy. So if you are a Poke friend or somebody interested in that, feel free to join us. And obviously, if you haven't hit that follow button here on the official Twitch channel, do so. We have a lot of great programming over the course of the month that we'll be producing here with some of my colleagues and with great broadcasters. So on behalf of all of us here, I just want to say thank you all for hanging out with us, and we hope to see you in our next chat. Take care, everybody. Have a great one.